Now in this video we'll be focusing once again on spiritual warfare, but specifically spiritual oppression. And now spiritual oppression, I will divide it broadly into two categories: spiritual oppression in your waking life versus spiritual oppression in your sleep. And in this video I'll be shedding light on both based on my experience. Now very briefly, spiritual oppression in your waking life, that will look like the following: a sudden string of misfortunes. That would basically be like seeing several bad events follow one after the other, especially when there is some breakthrough imminent. Mental illness / unsoundness. Now for this one, these are not merely conditions of the mind, but this is more often times than not spiritual. Demons manifesting in someone as a result of occupying them. By that definition, a lot of people could be considered as mentally unsound. Some more obvious than others, but can be spotted if you pay close attention to the things that they say. Things such as having suicidal thoughts. And finally, of course, you have trials and temptations, particularly for believers, with the aim to derail the path of the believer, derail us from progressing in our covenant and relationship with God, for which we need to apply the full armor of God. So now that's very briefly spiritual oppression in our waking life. That's what it looks like. But for this video, we'll be more focusing on the not so well known part, which is the spiritual oppression in one's dreams. Now we would have already discussed how dreams are more times than not spiritual. Now if you think about it, the easiest way for demons to inflict oppression / target us is to really wait until we are asleep, because that's when we are vulnerable and we all sleep. So it's not something that you can run away from. Now we even see this with Eliphaz in the Bible when we go to Job chapter 4 verses 12 to 16. Now a word was brought to me stealthily, my ear received the whisper of it. Amid disquieting dreams in the night, when deep sleep falls on people, fear and trembling seized me, made all my bones shake. A spirit glided past my face, and the hair on my body stood on end. It stopped, but I could not tell what it was. A form stood before my eyes, and I heard a hushed voice. And then, as you know, that spirit would have went on to mislead Eliphaz in the dream. So does this mean that we should cut down on our sleep? Let's not be ridiculous here. But rather, this emphasizes the significant importance of having a relationship with God. Specifically speaking with Him constantly, especially when you're going to bed, right before you go to bed. It's very important that you just have that one-on-one conversation as you go to bed with God, as that can make the difference with God covering you, God protecting you, and God repelling any darts or devices that these demons may try to use to target you or attack you while you are asleep. Now, what do these attacks look like in dreams? Well, some are more covert than others. But for the others, you can look at them and tell right away. Like, you can get that immediate reaction and say, yeah, this is definitely not holy, this is not godly, this must be an attack. Now, some of the more obvious signs of being attacked include things such as being attacked with weapons such as arrows, knives, guns. When you see those things in your dreams, that is a more obvious sign of a spiritual attack. Now, if you read Isaiah 54 verse 17, it will tell you that no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. Now, these weapons that you see in your dream, they are not literally the weapons that you know in your waking life, but they are spiritual weapons. Spiritual weapons that are utilized by demons to target certain aspects of your life, whether it's your career, your marriage, your family, etc. So you should get into the practice or the habit of renouncing these dreams immediately as you wake up from these dreams. Another common sign of being spiritually attacked is when you see in your dream you're being chased. Now, when you see yourself being chased, the central theme of this dream is usually fear. And fear is one of the things that these demons can use and weaponize against you. And they usually weaponize it as a sort of an intimidation tactic. By the way, being chased in dreams can also signify you having a fear in your life, a general fear in your life of something. So bear in mind the context to distinguish between the two. There are even times when you are being chased in a dream and you can't even see what it is that is actually chasing you, but you know you're just running from something because there is this sinister feeling of something that is chasing you. More times, if you have just stopped and turn around to see what it is that is actually chasing you and actually stand up to this thing, of course, with the authority of Jesus Christ, you know, it would have been almost as if that thing that was chasing you just suddenly decreased in power. You would no longer have that fear of running anymore. So bear that in mind the next time you have one of these dreams. Another one of the more obvious signs of spiritual oppression in your dream is when you see demonic manifestations in the dream itself. But when you really get down to the meat of it all, it's really just another fear dream. Some people will call it nightmares. But once you realize that demons typically use fear dreams to derail your trajectory, especially when you're on a path of achieving something good, maybe something for the Lord, you know, something according to your purpose. Once you realize that, then, you know, these fear dreams will no longer have the power that they once had. Alright, so now time for the dreams that are more covert in appearance in terms of spiritual oppression. Two of which are eating food in your dream that someone has prepared for you, as well as engaging in sexual activities or sexual relations in the dream. Now these two I have grouped together because they really and truly operate similarly, which is to bring you into some demonic agreement. And these dreams usually require you to actually break and renounce these agreements immediately before the intended outcome takes root. So now let's look at the food aspect of those dreams. Now, food in dreams can either have a positive or a negative meaning, depending on how it is used. Now, people, of course, wouldn't normally say anything harmful with eating food in dreams, because food is something that nourishes our body, you know. Food is something that people enjoy to eat, you know. And although that could be the case, and in which case that would mean that the spirit itself is being nourished when you eat the food. That's what the dream of eating food could represent. Although that is the case, there is also the case where the food could be weaponized against you. Just like in the physical realm, where people put poison in food, the same applies in the spiritual realm. It can be weaponized against you. And the question eventually boils down to, in the dream, how was this food prepared? Or how was this food presented to you? Now, in the dreams, we typically won't see the whole process of preparing the food. Well, if you do, then that's a plus, but typically we don't see that part. But we get to see the contextual surrounding how the food was presented to you, how the food was given to you. Now, some of the red flags that you can look for in terms of identifying this attack is to recognize and see if there is some haste, there's some rush, you know, or there may be some threat, or there may be all of the above when it comes to you eating the food. They maybe say, hey, you need to eat this, or, you know, you may be in a eating competition somehow, and you just see yourself rushing to eat the food. Those are some red flags to identify these attacks. You can think of those means as mechanisms to force their devices on you. Because at the end of the day, they cannot just come and put their devices on you just like that. You have to be the one to actually inflict the damage yourself through their influence. That's how they operate. Also, another thing to pay attention to is the person who is actually presenting the food to you. Because sometimes you may not even know the person, but you're still eating from them. That's another red flag. So that's the food aspect of those type of dreams. Now, in terms of the sex aspect of those type of dreams, now these ones have been heavily desensitized. You hear people talk about wet dreams and all of that. You know, teenage boys having wet dreams. It's a normal thing. But these things have significant spiritual implications. Now, this phenomenon of engaging in sexual activities in a dream, they are really manifested by two spirits, which people will know as incubus and succubus. Now, incubus is the one that is targeted to the females, and the succubus for the males. So just as how in the physical realm, the act of sex really joins two parties together to form one, the same concept applies in the spiritual realm. Hence, when you see these sexual dreams occur, it is really these demonic spirits that are joining themselves to you so that you can come into agreement once again to whatever their will is. And if this agreement is not dealt with renunciation, then they will form what we call spiritual spouses, which means that they can come back anytime they feel because they are the spouse, they are entitled to. That's the nature of the agreement that you would have entered into via that dream. Now, there are many other means of spiritual oppression in dreams or spiritual oppression generally, but those are some of the main ones that I find affect majority of people nowadays. So it is important to have that consciousness on how to identify and spot these things as spiritual oppression and ultimately renounce these things, because it is when we don't renounce these things that is when these dreams have the greatest power. These dreams will just go under the radar and you will see things happen and you're wondering where this come from. And because you'd have just disregarded the dream and forgotten all about the dream, you won't be able to pinpoint the source of these things happening in your life. So these are some of my findings, and I hope that you find these helpful. If you have other thoughts or other things that you would like to add, you can leave a comment, just to share your experiences and so forth.